So you watched a few Blade of New York videos, and you finally mustered up the energy to go buy your own skates. You put them on, and you're ready to go. You're ready to hit the streets. But one problem, you don't know how to get up. All right. So one of the first challenges of learning how to skate is to actually get up. Which, some people it's pretty intuitive, but for other people, there's some challenges. So we're gonna take it from the safest place possible. So when you learn to get up, you always want to learn from a sitting position on the floor. All right. You also want an ideal surface. In this case, we're on the grass. The reason we're on the grass is because, one, it's soft. If you were to fall, it wouldn't hurt. And most importantly, is that it doesn't allow your wheels to roll. So you can focus on getting up and the whole motion, the physical aspect of it, and not worry about rolling away or falling as much. So this is definitely the best place to start. So what you want to do is actually, you want to get on your knees first thing, okay? So you turn over and get on your knees. All right? This is how you always want to start. This is how you get up. You don't want to start from your side or from your stomach or any other possible way. You always want to start on your knees, okay? I'm not wearing knee pads or pads right now, but ideally you would, because you're new at this, but I'm not wearing them, so yeah. So you want to start on your knees, and then what you're going to do is you're going to pick whichever leg feels more comfortable. It's usually your dominant. And what you're going to do is you're going to place it up and in front of you, like this, okay? It's very important that you place your foot more to the side than to the center. So if your foot or your leg is between your arms, it's generally going to be a problem. Most people have an issue getting up like this. So you actually want it so you can easily place your hands in front of your body and have your leg off to the side. Not too off to the side, but right braced up right against your arm. Once you feel comfortable and you have this placed on the floor with all four wheels touching the ground, what you want to do is touch the ground with your hands as a way to have support. So you can feel the ground. If anything, you use it to push up and get up. And the next step is to place your remaining foot, in my case, which is my left, exactly as you have your right foot placed. Okay? Once you have both feet on the ground solid, and you don't feel like you're rolling, what you want to do is you want to stand straight up slowly, okay? Try not to lean forward. So if you lean forward, your wheels will go on the front, you'll go on your toes, and you'll roll backwards. Try to have the weight on your heels. Stand straight up, slowly, stand straight. You want to keep your knees bent a little, okay? So over here, once you're standing up, we're on the grass, so we have a lot of space to work with. We can mess up, we don't have to be perfect. But normally when you're on hard surfaces and you're more likely to roll, once you stand up, you actually want to adjust your feet so that under your shoulder and your toes are pointing directly straight, like so, okay? And this is important because this will help you not roll in directions you don't want to. This applies to level ground, so if the floor isn't leveled, you still may roll, but if the floor is leveled and your toes are pointing straight, you should be fine. So for those who have really good balance and strong legs, there's another way to do this, but I don't generally recommend it because this is a beginner video. So what you could do is you could actually place your dominant leg in front of you, like the previous method, but then you can get your hands, and instead of placing them on the floor, you can place them on your knee, okay? And in this method, you combine the last two steps into one. We're gonna push up using our hands, pushing against our knees, and we're gonna simultaneously place our remaining foot on the floor, like so. Now this method might be a little scary to you, but some people can do it, so if you can, it's definitely doable. This last method is for people who have mobility issues, like really, you know, they can't really do most of this. And generally I find if you're like a larger person, you might have an issue where you can't place your legs close enough, and when you try to stand, you fall over. So let's say in this case, I try to do what I showed you previously, where you place your feet to the side, right? But some people can't do this, and they'll end up having their feet out like this because of mobility issues or whatever the reason. And they'll end up like this, okay? You can see that my feet are very wide apart right now, and this isn't ideal. If I were to try to stand now, I would definitely fall. So what I recommend for you is to keep your hands on the floor. If this is you, keep your hands on the floor, and you want to roll your feet back and then your hands back. Roll your feet back, hands back. And if you notice, my feet are progressively getting closer together. roll your feet back, hands back, and then once they're close enough, you can stand up. Same thing as before, fix your feet, and you're ready to go. So now we're on the actual ground, all right? This is much harder. So unless you're very comfortable doing what we previously did on the grass, you should not be on smooth ground yet, okay? But we're gonna do the same exact things we did before and show you how they work here as well as there, okay? So the first one was placing your dominant foot to the side. Boom. Second step was to place the other foot. Boom. Now what you want to do is you want to slowly, remember, weight on your heels, not on your toes. You want to slowly stand up and then fix your feet as soon as you can. Make sure your toes are pointing generally straight and you should be fine, okay? So that one works here. Let's try the next step. The other method was the one leg pushing up. This one is a little more complicated, but some people can do it. Place your dominant leg forward. Put your hands on your knee, push up, place your other foot. Once you're up, make sure your feet are next to each other, shoulder width apart, hands straight, toes pointing straight. All right. Last one, which is really important. This one definitely, a lot of people have this struggle. Like I said, the larger people, the people who aren't really flexible, is the wide stance, okay? So if you put your feet out and you generally don't have the mobility, you end up like this. Remember, it's very important to push your hands back, have your feet meet closer. Push your hands back, have your feet move closer. Push your hands back, and then when you're ready, stand up, place your toes straight, boom. It works here and it works there. So now we're standing. So you got up, and now, congratulations. But another challenge is actually standing still. Surprisingly difficult for some people just have it intuitively. We're gonna go over some steps and some procedures you can go to make it a lot easier, okay? When we stand on inline skates, we tend not to stand straight and upright, okay? If you're very straight and upright, you're more likely to fall backwards, not really forwards, but you are more likely to fall, okay? When we stand on skates, we like having an athletic stance. You want to be a little limber. You want all your joints to be bent a bit. So I'll give you an example. You want your knees to be bent. You want a bend in your ankle also. You want a bend in your hips, okay? You want it so if you were to draw a line straight down to the ground, the sensor would line up at almost every joint. It might be slightly off, depends on your body, but you want your body weight to be centered, okay? Some people will do this and they'll think they're doing what I am, but what they'll do is they won't bend at the ankle, right? And then they'll just bend their knees. And then they do what I call air sitting, okay? So air sitting means your butt is really far behind your body, and as you can see, you're more likely to fall. So when you bend your knees, you also want to bend at your ankles also. So your knees are almost above or around, lining up with your toes, okay? Because if you don't, you'll do the air sit, and then all your weight be loaded to the back, and you're more likely to fall. Also, you want your hands to be in front of your body, okay? You want to make believe that you're playing piano or holding a shopping cart. I like to tell people make believe you're holding a shopping cart, okay? When you're good later on, you can do whatever you want with your hands. You know, you won't fall. But at the beginning, it helps to have your hands in front of you because you're probably going to have pads, and most of our pads are actually designed to protect the front of our body, not the back. So you want to be in a ready position in case you do fall. You have your hands in front of you to defend you. It's always better to fall forwards than backwards. Because forwards, you can use your hands to protect yourself. If you fall backwards, you can't really defend yourself. You'll probably land on your butt or on your head. They're both pretty bad places to fall. Alright? So another thing, we're going to talk about possibly falling, which is part of the experience, right? So you're going to fall because we're learning, and that's normal, alright? So the key to rollerblading is to controlled falls, okay? If you fall randomly and wildly swing your hands when doing so, you're gonna get hurt, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do like mock falls. We're gonna practice falling, okay? So let's say you got up. If you ever feel like you're gonna fall, all right, the first thing I want you to do is to try to go as low as possible, all right? Which means bending at your ankles and your knees and your hips. All right? The lower you are, lower center of gravity, the easier it is to keep your balance. So if you feel like you're falling, bend your joints, reach for your knees. You can brace your knees. You'll generally find that this will help you regain balance. If this is no longer the case, and you still feel like you're falling, this is why I want your hands in front of you. What you want to do is bend as low as possible and then reach for the floor and fall forward, okay? You do not want to throw yourself forward. If you throw yourself forward, you'll get hurt. And once again, you want to be as compressed and low to the ground as possible, because the taller you are, the greater the fall technically from the top for your hands and for your head if they hit the ground. So you would be standing, you would lose your balance, you would reach for your knees, and if it's too late, you keep on bending as low as you can, hands forward, fall forward, boom. So you feel comfortable standing, you have the balance right. Then you notice that your feet either go forward, sideways, or back, and it's giving you a hard time standing, okay? This is related to two things. One, you have to make sure that your shoulders and your knees are lined up. If you have a wide stance, you're more likely to have your legs spread. So just to begin with, make sure that your shoulders and knees and feet are generally lined up, okay? The next thing is, if the floor is level, as long as your toes are pointing generally straight forward, you shouldn't roll forward or backwards, okay? If you are rolling forwards or backwards, it could be related to the fact that your feet aren't pointing straight. Once again, this only applies to level ground. We'll discuss any before later on. So I'll give you an example. If my toes, instead of being pointed straight, are pointed out, my legs might slowly drift and cause me to do a split, okay? Most of you will not recover from this if you're new, and you'll fall, okay? So if you find that you're going forward for some reason and your legs are opening, it's because your toes are not pointing straight. Your toes must point straight, your shoulder width apart, and then you generally won't roll, okay? If you find that for some reason you're going backwards, that means your toes are pointed towards each other. If your toes are pointed towards each other, you generally tend to go backwards, okay? So once again, on the flat floor, it's best to have your toes pointing as straight forward as possible, as this will prevent you from rolling. So now we're going to discuss scenarios where the floor is not level, okay? And in these situations, it's a little harder to stand still because the tendency to roll exists. Gravity will take you whichever direction the floor is pointing at, okay? So for example, if you're on a slight incline, you'll find that you tend to roll backwards, because that's what gravity's trying to bring you. So in a case like this, what you want to do is you actually want to point your toes slightly outwards, okay? And you want to put your weight to the ground, nowhere else. So toes slightly outwards, weight to the ground. So if you notice previously I said if your toes are pointing out and the floor is level, it makes you go forwards, generally. So this actually negates the hill to some extent. The hill wants you to roll backwards, but your toes pointing out want you to go forward. Therefore, they sort of cancel each other. So here's the opposite situation, where you're actually in a decline instead of an incline, okay? Once again, if the floor is declined and your toes are pointing straight, you're gonna roll with the gravity. I previously mentioned that if your toes were pointing inwards, you would end up going backwards. Similar concept as before. If you're at an incline and you feel like you're going forward inadvertently, if you point your toes at each other and point your weight to the ground, so put toes at each other and weight to the ground, it'll actually prevent you from going down the hill. Because previously I mentioned that if your toes are pointing in at each other, you have the tendency to go backwards, okay? So with the heel going down and then your feet pointed at each other, wanting to go backwards, they technically cancel each other out to some extent. Another way to stop, which works in most situations in general, decline or incline, is actually do like a little T-stance, okay? When I mean T-stance is to have one foot perpendicular to the other like so. All right, this might be a little harder for some people. I find that sometimes they have an issue with it as far as balance, but if you do this general stance and you brace your heels against each other, regardless of the direction, incline or decline, you tend to stand still, okay? Some tips for this, okay? My voice just cracked. Anyway, some tips for this. When I tell you to do a T, and your leg goes behind you like so does your hips, okay? If you notice, my waist is pointing this way. It's no longer pointing the forward direction I originally started. Some people will try to do this T stance, but keep their waist or their body facing forwards. This forces you to be in a more unnatural contortion. You might not have the mobility to do this, and you'll feel a strain and a desire to twist, which will compromise the stance. So when you do this T stance, I want your waist, your hip, and your body to point away with your leg. So this way, it's more natural. It's not straining on your hips. You won't have a mobility issue. So today we learned how to stand up safely, how to prevent yourself from falling by having proper posture, and if you are to fall, how to fall properly. After that, we learned how to stand still and prevent ourselves from rolling in undesired directions. The next thing we're going to learn is the basics to going forward. But that's actually the next video. So don't forget to click subscribe, click on that little bell, and we'll see you next time.